promise you won't make it. I don't even care where this road leads. All I know is when my heart is gone near the tree.
DickJones, what's crack-a-lackin', brother? Can you hear me? Oh
Yeah, man, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Look at you, man. Loving the get up. Looks like you're about to perform at some 80s concert or something, man. I'm feeling it.
That's what I was going for, actually.
My man,
How are you?
It's good to see your smile. It's good to see your face, brother. What's happening?
You too, man. Oh, not much. Not much. Just, locked in the house.
Yeah, man. Another lockdown. Fourth lockdown. Fucking crazy. Anyway, let me just give you a quick introduction, brother, and let's get it. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, freaks and geeks, brothers and sisters around the world, it is your boy, Chris Shule, a.k.a. the Esoteric Noetic, a.k.a. the Chocolate Nubian. We have DickJones, this pretty man over here. He is an actor, MC, socialite, resident, awesome. I love the fact that this guy speaks the truth. He doesn't pull his punches. You shall experience that. This guy is the real deal. DickJones, what an amazing name. What an amazing brother from another mother. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about what's going on in M-Town, what's going on around the world. Crazy times. DickJones, what's happening with you, brother?
What's cracking, brother? Thank you for the intro. That was amazing. Yeah, not much, man. Just as you know yourself, being in Melbourne, just locked in really at the moment for 2 weeks now, coming on 2 weeks. So let's see how long they lock us in for. I'm thinking probably longer. It feels like they will.
It's a real weird vibe going on in Melbourne at the moment, man. On one hand, I feel like people are unsettled. I mean, I see a lot of people protesting. We've seen, I look at the news and people obviously aren't happy with what's going on, but they feel like we just need to stay together by staying apart. We just need to stay with all of these ridiculous lockdowns. And I, on the other hand, I just want to freaking rip my hair out, man. I'm thinking to myself, why is the Australian public so willing to accept this thing? Is this what's happened over just a couple of generations? Is this what Australia is about? We just do as we're told, mate. Yeah, she'll be right. I mean, what the fucking hell is going on, man? We basically have a government that is locking us in our homes, telling us that we can't potentially even leave the state. That's where it's headed. And everyone is just sitting by and saying, "Oh, look, just get the vaccine. It'll be right." And I'm thinking to myself, "Are you fucking crazy?" What's your feeling on this, bro?
Man, I was just thinking about that yesterday about what it's taken for us to get to this stage. Just looking back on the last, say, 20 years, just at culture and sport and music and film and things like that. And people are just going back to when I was in school as well in the early 2000s and kind of the way people were thinking and the way people were and people's attitudes. And I was just thinking about what it's taken to actually push us to this point where we're able to be controlled in the physical realm. But obviously it's been a build-up of the I guess, the psychological and you could say the spiritual as well to get us to the point where we're physically now able to be in this literal prison. Whereas before I feel like we've been in this prison mentally in a lot of different ways, culturally, and through education and things like that. But now the actual cage per se is now being sprung upon us and we can now see it with our very eyes, whereas before it was maybe a bit harder to see. Maybe people like me and you could feel it and knew that it was there, but the average person going about their day, unless they're affected, couldn't really care less.
Absolutely. It's been this slow exponential growth of tyranny. It's like there was a time a few years ago where I'd be watching these crazy restrictions apply, slowly we'd have our freedoms eroded. I'd be hearing people like Alex Jones talk about conspiracies and how we're moving into this Orwellian state. And I would be seeing these changes, but they were so incremental and so subtle. But just over the last year or two, it's just crescendoed into this, like, it's like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
Just like that, over the space of a couple of weeks and a few months, we are living in a draconian empire, man. So whereas I feel like you and I could always see this stuff, the fact that it's happened so fast, I mean, now we have what is it? Prime Minister Netanyahu. This is the latest news I just came across. Is the last week has just made us conspiracy theorists seem like the only people that aren't dealing conspiracy theories. Netanyahu comes out and says that they're looking at implementing microchips on the children now, essentially to prevent them. Well, it's a social distancing mechanism. So essentially, kids are going to have this chip put on them, and they're going to have to socially distance. And apparently it's voluntary to begin with, but you know how this shit works. He's looking at potentially making this thing mandatory. And then, of course, we just recently had Fauci announce that, it turns out that he was lying, and the virus may very much have come from the Wuhan lab. So all of this conspiratorial stuff that's been perpetuated by us crazies is on the verge of being a reality.
Yeah, man, it's very frustrating when you already knew this stuff about a year to a year and going on a year and a half now. Because going back to what you were saying about Alex Jones and people like David Icke and things like that, people have come out, those two especially over the last year and a half, just saying, I mean, even before last year, they've come out and said this sort of stuff is either coming or what's going on. But with the Wuhan lab, that information was accessible a year to a year and a half ago, but obviously because it hadn't been confirmed in mainstream media, then it was irrelevant to the general population, as well as the Fauci thing coming out and the emails. And I mean, it's just the same old shit, really. It's the same old cycle of, okay, I've seen it happen too many times now, even before COVID, to even care anymore to a large degree about how stupid people are. It just doesn't surprise me anymore, because it's this cycle of the information's accessible, it's out there, finally ends up coming out, but by the time it's come out, we're on to the next thing. And then they rely on people's I guess they rely on the public's memory, because people forget within 2 weeks what's what, or even quicker now. The trends come and the trends go, or the fear comes and then the fear goes. So people are on, if you would have looked at Melbourne a month ago, living normally, not thinking about it, and then boom, it's in the headlines again, and now everyone's freaking out, and you've got the same fear that's rushing through people, or at least you'd hope just the dumb people. But what the percentage of who's dumb and who's not in this city is hard to say, because not everyone's vocal about it. But yeah, man, it's just a joke. And at this point, I saw a headline today in the newspaper or something about we want 70% of Victoria vaccinated before we get your freedom back. And they're already holding the there was the Indigenous match in Perth, the footy.
They're saying something
Saturday
similar
night.
in Canada as well. They're trying to get above 70%, boom shakalaka, before they can return to normal. Well, I think normal is pretty much out of the picture at this point in time. The fact that the government has this under their hat, they can throw these lockdowns whenever they want now, is really concerning.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's ruining businesses here, man. I mean, I've been seeing people, news reports, obviously, people saying that they can't take another one of this, I mean, it's already destroyed countless businesses. And, you brought up an interesting point in regards to how people are so willing to buy into this dream spell. And I would ask you this, though. Who do you believe in a time when there is so much information? I mean, I think the main distinction between the times we're living in is that whereas it may have been difficult to access information a few hundred years ago, now it's like there is too much information. It's like
an abundance.
So there's so many lights that it's blinding. Metaphorically, what I'm saying is there's so many sources of information that people don't know which source to rely on. So whereas we say, people like you and I say, well, all this information about Wuhan, et cetera, was out there, when the mainstream media is telling you one narrative, and then you have a bunch of conspiracy theorists saying something else, and a bunch of other different narrative, it's very hard for the typical Momo that doesn't have the time to delve into this stuff to really understand or come to a realization of what's going on.
Absolutely.
So how do you
how do you
I guess what I'm trying to say is it's understandable that people get caught up in this quagmire, but what are your thoughts on that? Like, do you think people have an excuse for being so easily led astray, or
Well, how do you know who to trust or who to listen to? Yes and no, because I've thought about this a lot as well over the past year, especially. Yeah, I mean, it's a I'm very much about free will and personal choice and freedom, really, which is a democratic society. It's very imperfect, but essentially being able to make your own choices about what you do with your life, how you can earn an income, having choices about where you go, when you go, how you earn, what you believe in, what you put in your body, all that sort of stuff. That's how we've really been able to live in the West, here in Australia at least, and parts of the world that are democratic have been able to have the privilege to live like that. But the question was, how do you do people have the excuse? I don't know. It's a very hard one, because I guess you meet people along the way who say that they were deceived and then they came to see the truth eventually over time. So you'd hope that there's still plenty of people out there who will. So in that way, I still have hope for a lot of people out there who maybe will come around. But then if you want to talk about the last year and a half and all the evidence and the obviousness of it, people must be pretty asleep and also not really in tune with their human nature, I'd say, to not or just not even understand history to understand what's really going on in front of you. At some point, alarm bells have to ring. And I think there's a certain percentage of the population where the alarm bells haven't gone off, and they won't ever go off. And they will be the people who will go ahead and, take the poison and basically, who knows what's going to happen there? No one knows the long-term effects. No one knows anything there. I mean, but this is the whole point, because you look at the doctrine of the people who are pushing this stuff and the globalists and the people who want to eradicate a certain percentage of the population. I think it's like 90% or something like that or more. And their reasoning is they go by all sorts of, they
Trust
have
the
cults.
science. You see, that's what it all comes down to me. The thing is, if you are, you don't even need to know what's going on in my worldview. Like, it wouldn't have mattered to me if I had done no research whatsoever in regards to what's going on with this pandemic. Fundamentally, no one's coming here to force me to stay at home, forcing me to put something in my body. But a lot of people think that we need to look at the science, and the science is supposed to determine whether or not we have human rights. And when you get caught up in that worldview, that's when you get lost in this information war, because the information is not necessary to having the courage to actually say no to this stuff. Like, a lot of people think this is a war on information, and to some extent it is. But the way that I see it, it's about courage. Courage is the testing point of every virtue. And the fact that we are in this situation because people are afraid, and granted, it has to do with perception. This is what David Icke always says, that the fact that people are perceiving reality wrongly due to this fear that is not actually a legitimate fear. That's what that's what brings them to take the actions they're taking. But fundamentally, if you have the mindset that regardless of what is going on in the external world, regardless of what threat may lie, you will not allow a government or any individual to force something on you, that's a very different conversation. So I feel like whereas it's easy to get lost in the information, and I feel like everyone's focusing on the information at the moment, like the science, this scientism that we're all caught up in, which drives me insane, right? Because it's like, what, the science is supposed to determine whether or not I get forcibly raped? This is what it's come to. Never have we ever seen in the history of modern lore a situation where basically science determines whether or not you have something forced on you medically. That's supposed to be like a no-no. Like, human rights has nothing to do with whether or not there is a virus in the air that's able to allow the government to do all of these crazy things, and suspend your human rights. But this is where we are.
Yeah, and I made a great point about the forcible rape. I love that example, because it's very clear and stern, and also it's got a punch to it when you say it like that, because that's what it is in reality, and most people just don't realize it or don't see it or don't care. Maybe people enjoy it, or maybe people are used to it. I think as well. I think that's another thing, is people are used to being told what to do. Especially for if you want to look at women, biologically are more prone to being told what to do. That might not be the most popular thing or the way of
I'm sure a
looking
lot
at
of
it,
feminists are going
but
to be
just
angry at you
biological.
right now, brother.
Fuck 'em.
No, but it's interesting. You bring up a point. Like typically, we see. I would say it's fair to say the men taking arms and fighting against tyranny and injustice. But we've had some great women in history that have taken arms, and I think women really are at the heart of really changing things at the moment. Because you have a look at this cultural war, right? Women
There's a
hold
lot.
the power when it comes to breeding. Like they basically choose who they're gonna be with, that kind of stuff. And when
Yeah.
you have that kind of power, it's just a question of how you wield it. I mean, I can see a lot of women taking a stance and saying, if you don't support this freedom movement, then I'm sorry, you ain't gonna get this punani. You know what I mean? And obviously that's gonna
Yeah.
stop the fucking socialists dead in their tracks right there.
Mm.
But the fact that
Yeah,
I feel,
and look, yeah.
yeah, I just
Sorry,
feel
I
like
was
so
just
many
going to
women at
say,
the moment are not on board with this freedom thing, but there are definitely strong women out there that are making a stand against this tyranny.
definitely, definitely, and I see them all the time. And if anything, there's more of those women than men. I guess the point of what I was saying as well, when it comes to that submission side of things, it's not. It's. I was saying it's say a biological or typical or cliche trait of women, which it is. But then you've got that in a huge number of men now, as you'd call the soy boys or the cucks or however you want to put it. There's so many men now that aren't in line with their identity and who they are. There's a huge identity crisis amongst men. Men are scared to stand up. Men are scared to say anything, because if you look through history, you've got to put a lot on the line as a man if you're going to stand up. It's like your reputation, not just your reputation, but everything's at stake. That physical element. Because once men start getting involved at a bigger level, hopefully that will push the government to back off. But that could easily lead to a bigger physical war at some point amongst, or a war, say, just against men and the police, which is starting to happen more and more now. The conflicts that are happening. But you'd think if there was more men out there at a larger scale, that this would be, they would pull back a lot more. Because I remember when they brought in the third lockdown for the 5 days, and people were really pushing back because it was so soon after we'd just come out of that long one, and people had enough. That was when the tennis was on, and there was just a big pushback in the air. You could just feel it, but also through the media, and just people in general were pissed off, and they really stopped that lockdown. I always thought they were going to extend that one, but then this one we're currently in, I think people have just had just enough time to kind of feel like things are normal, and then we're going to go through the whole, it's just 7 days, just another 7 days. Even if it's not as long this time, even if it's a month to 2 months, that's going to be long enough to really kind of kill the remaining businesses, or take whatever life was left in these dying businesses away, to where now it's even closer to just having corporate control in every day, where we go and we shop. The smaller businesses won't be there won't be as many as there was before. Organic businesses, for example, things like that. If you want to go get organic foods, better foods, you'll have to end up shopping at bigger corporations. That's the end goal. We all know that anyway. If you
Sure.
include in
And
on
they've
it
started
all.
implementing these QR codes at shopping centers now.
Oh,
It's
all
slowly
that.
coming
Couldn't
here.
believe it.
Yeah, but you raise a really interesting point, which I kind of want to harp on a bit longer, which is just the lack of masculinity. It's like there's this idea now that masculinity is toxic, right? Toxic masculinity, when really it's the masculinity that is what historically was keeping away the invaders, the invaders from the city gates, that kind of stuff. And I feel like we're in an age now. Like, I don't know what you think the culprit is. I think it's a lot of things. I personally think it's happening on so many different levels, from the fluoride to the programming. I mean, even just over the last like 7 years, the very idea of fluidity in gender now has become this thing where we see so many, like, we see so many effeminated men. And I think it has to do with this agenda where, like, what it is to be a male has been demonized. I mean, this is not just within the cultural sense, but I see this even on a physiological level. I remember hearing hearing Tim on the Timcast talk about how they've done a lot of tests recently, and the level of testosterone that is within men has been significantly reduced just over the last 30 years. Like it's at the level where I don't want to speak out of turn, but essentially they were comparing this to, let's say, back in the 50s, right? Like the testosterone level of the let's say 70-year-old men then would have been the equivalent of like 20, 30-year-olds today. It's that bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's the point where it's
Yeah.
shocking. And I think this has a lot to do with what we're seeing at the moment, because I firmly believe that if the government tried to pull this shit, let's say 20 years ago, not even 20 years ago, maybe arguably, there is no way we would have seen this this level of just backing down and just letting the government freaking
I agree.
mow you.
I agree. They've snuck it in, and it's been it's been creeping underneath. And I've been able to feel it for a long time. I've always identified that there was something wrong in just say the education system, and the way I always felt demonized, or like I was the black sheep for simply being boisterous, or always, you know, being a bit louder, or not backing down on my opinion, you know. And you've got people who've, especially if they're an authority over you, you've got the ego to, oh, how dare you think you can even say something? How about you just shut up? And most people will just go and duck their head, and they'll become so accustomed to it and used to it. By the time they hit the workforce or the university system, they fit right in perfectly, and they do what they're told. You've got to always be going against it, internally, physically, spiritually, mentally. You've got to always be pushing back, and it becomes exhausting, but you get used to it and you have to do it. But with, like you were saying, the masculinity, I saw another thing as well about someone was, I think it was actually a TikTok video, and someone was talking about how, isn't it funny how all these old yearbook photos from like the 80s, the guys in the last year of school look so much older and more masculine, and now you compare the yearbook photos, it's staggering. Most men now have very feminine faces, and they look underdeveloped, like they don't have the structure of a male face. It's very like, you know, and it's all these soy boy kind of feminine types walking around now with handbags, and now, you know, and now people are just straight out, once again, the underlying propaganda and push underneath comes to the top, where you've got a high rate now of men who are going out and just full blown chopping their dick off, and that's a complete other thing as well. But you know,
I hear what you're
that
saying.
is, you know,
And it's also within the psychology of men. Like I find so many men have this attitude where they want the government to take care of them. And I see that as being a very unmasculine attitude. You know, typically what it meant to be a man was to be rebellious. So back in the 70s, 80s, it's like, fuck the government, fuck the establishment. Now it's like, oh, look, just do as they're telling you to do. Obedience is a virtue. That's such an inherently non-masculine quality. And I think it's a combination of not just the programming from the media, but also within the pollutants that we have within the current system, man. But I'm sorry to cut you off, man. I like where you're going with this, brother.
No, and I'll just go back to what you were saying before about courage, because that's you said it earlier, and it's a very important point, because courage is absolutely what now is going to divide people, especially men. And courage is something that is extremely important, if not the most important thing, because the courage is what will fuel you and give you the strength to continue when other people won't. It will give you the strength to stand up when other people won't, and also to keep pushing through. It's amazing the things that can be done with courage, and the things that are achieved with courage, just simply because you believe in yourself and believe that you can do it, and know that even if something happens to you, you're going to put that above yourself. And it's sacrifice mixed in with that. That's another thing most people don't have today. It's just very easy now for people are lazy, and it's easy for people to not be. It's like this I felt it for the first time through lockdown in 2020, because I've never felt it before, ever since I was young. And it was this apathetic feeling, as after you've been treaded down for 6 to 7 months of lockdown. I finally understood, and it's been a good experience for me to understand what it may be like for the average do-gooder or follower out there who just does blindly whatever they're told. And I just felt, after being stuck inside and going to these protests and being pushed down and trying to tell people, getting nowhere with it, you just feel exhausted after a while. And at the same time, you're in a bit of shock with what's happening in front of you. You just can't believe it. You know, now, of course, over time, we've gotten used to it. But all of that mixed in with just not even being able to leave the house, having a curfew, drinking more, not exercising, just stuff like that. And it mixes together. And there was no reason, no reason to be ambitious, because there was nothing to be ambitious about. That you couldn't leave the house. What was going on? How can I pursue my talents? Which is, you know, I mean, you can, but if you're like, once again, it'll comes to just having the strength to just keep pushing through. But for me, it was a learning period, because, you know, there's still, you couldn't go out and see people. You couldn't go. I'm a very social person, so I need that in the avenues that I'm strong in, which is like communication with people and you know, music and film stuff, and that all involves people and ideas and being kind of on a consistent move forward. And when you're kind of stuck quite literally in the physical, just on your couch, it's very easy for someone like me as well to just, I finally realized what it must feel like for a lot of people who just, and they're happy being like that. Whereas for me, it was a temporary thing. Now I'm getting back on the horse and trying to be focused. But then once again, boom, here comes another lockdown. So they keep pushing and they keep pushing and they keep pushing, and they're just trying to stand down onto people. And me and you are people who understand what this is. We have the strength to keep going. We understand, you know, I'd say we're the type of people who'll be able to keep going through it, but there's a lot of people out there who won't. And they don't understand what they're dealing with either. They don't have that bigger view of what's happening. They just feel beaten down. They're reactive to what's in front of them, and then these people will start killing themselves, which is another thing in itself as well. So
I was thinking about that, because you and I are very similar in the fact that we're both performers. We love going out, communicating, and I think that comes down to the fact that at the heart of who we are, like, we have the attitude where we're not afraid of challenges, of confrontation, of exposing ourselves. Like, you tend to be a bit of a extrovert, right? I mean, we're very extrovert, and I think to have that personality takes a certain level of courage to begin with. There are some people, though, that have really embraced this lockdown in the sense that they don't like showing their face when they go out. Like, I actually know plenty of women, strangely enough, that like the idea of wearing a mask because they don't have to worry about showing their face to people, and it's somehow intimidating for them. But I just think the one thing I've always liked about you, and I saw this straight away. The first video I ever watched of you was where you were out. I think, you know, actually you were talking about how if anyone is going to force you to wear a mask, you were like, I can't remember exactly what you said, but you were going to be physically very firm and very, I don't think violent is the right word, because to me it's justifiable force, you know? Like, I don't think there's anything inherently violent in defending yourself when people are essentially trying to force you to do something that they have no right to. So I call that like virtue, you know? Like, I think it's a virtuous thing. And you struck me as someone that did not take any unjustifiable shit, and I really admire that. I think I always say that courage is an incredibly endearing quality. I think it's such a hallmark of masculinity. And when you don't see that, I think we naturally lose respect for people. Like, whenever I find I'm around people that don't even have the balls to put themselves out there, you know, whether it's to approach a woman or to do anything because they're afraid that someone might tell them off. There is a part of you that that really frowns on that kind of stuff. And the one thing that I've always admired about you, and I guess what I'm trying to get at is, like, whether, like, people like us, we get into these, I mean, because you're an MC, we get into the performing arts because we inherently have that quality, or like, it's just interesting when you look at the kinds of people that are gravitating towards accepting these lockdowns and the kind of people that aren't. One of the things this is me just tangentially speaking, but another thing I've noticed is that people that typically hit the gym, people that are, like, I heard Zuby make a tweet recently that people that like gains, like making gains, are the kind of people that aren't in support of the government taking away their shit, because they feel like I can't remember the phrase he used, but basically people aren't entitled to your gains, you know, that kind of shit, you know, like whether it's your gains through your own money, your own property, like you realize that that's something that you've had to work for, so you keep yourself. But essentially it's this psychology where people that are willing to actually do the work and make something of themselves, they tend to have I think it takes courage and will to do that. And they tend to be the kind of people like our tribe, the kind of people that are actually standing up against what is going on. And the people that, now to me, it all comes down to this. It all comes down to fear and courage, because you look at this and what's going on right now. I'm afraid of the fact that I might get a virus. This is what a lot of people are saying. I'm afraid that something might happen to me or my friends and my family. Therefore, I'm going to forcibly restrict you from going out. And the underlying theme within that is fear. And then you have people like you and I that are saying, regardless of what happens, because this is what all comes down to me. I don't know if this virus is super dangerous. I mean, obviously this is YouTube, so it obviously is. But fundamentally, it's not going to make me force people to stay at home. It's not going to make me rape people, put something into their body. It's not going to take away from my core principles, because fundamentally, I don't allow what is going on here in the world affect who I am, because I have something within myself that always spurs me towards gravitating towards challenges and embracing the fear. But definitely. I know that's just like a really random rant, but I feel like
no, not at all.
Yeah, at the heart of this, it is a battle between fear and courage.
Definitely. No, you see that out there a lot with fear and courage. It's the defining thing between two types of people really is fear and courage. And you were saying before about being able to respect people more and admire them based on that. It's 100% a thing. It's you know, what is it? History favors the bold. That's a saying. That's a saying as well. But it's true. It's that's what I've
only the brave
really
deserve the fair. That's another one of my favorites, man. You know, like I get equally as frustrated at guys that don't want to approach beautiful women because they feel they might get rejected. It's like, oh, here's a guy. And that's one of the things I also admire about you, man. It's like you're relentlessly approaching every hot girl when we go out in the city. I'm like, bro, seriously, man, you're relentless, you know? And I think it translates in every area of your life. Like that's, once again, you won't find people that are bold when it comes to interacting with women, people, the kind of people that are advocating for lockdowns, because it takes courage.
Well, this is an interesting thing, going back to what you're saying about courage, because I've been reflecting on everyone's got strong points, weak points, things that they need to work on. And I find what's interesting about, say, people in the entertainment industry who have made it, but who have also been cucked and have to say, you know, it's part of the game. It's like the people who have worked so hard to get where they are, whether that's musicians. This is the majority. There's a lot of that aren't like this as well, but the majority of these A-listers and these high up people, these people haven't gotten there like overnight, and also they've worked very hard to get there, extremely hard, and they've gone through all sorts of shit, especially being in those industries, to be there. I think there's a huge, I was going to say a handful, definitely not a handful, a huge amount of those people who were able to get there a lot easier where a lot of people wouldn't have been able to, because they're just straight up sociopaths, and they're able to mimic people's emotions, like a lot of the people who are running this shit at the moment and are pushing this upon people and don't care. And then at the same time are able to then come out and push the complete opposite of what their life has been, which is just submit, just do this. So it's like these people who get to this elite club, they're the ones that are only deserving of the hard work and the push. But if you were to look at their lives and what they've done to get where they are, it's nothing what they're telling everyone else to do. It doesn't, you know what I mean? It becomes this club where, when you really start seeing it like that about the people who are pushing this upon people, it's just what makes it so sick is the media, who a lot of them know full well. Once again, there's people within that industry who would still be going along because they believe it, and they're useful idiots who are useful idiots who are higher up. So they're a bit more useful idiots than the useful idiots who are maybe jabbing someone. But there's people up there who know full well what they're doing and what they're saying, but they don't care. It's basically like fair game. It's survival now of the fittest, whereas before life's always been survival of the fittest. People may just have never realized this because the government has always been taking care of people, or they've always had some crutch there. Now this is the first time, I'd say, in a long time where now survival of the fittest and natural selection is really going to take place in real time when it comes, and it always has been there. Like, you could always arguably say that, oh, that's based on people's life decisions, what people put into their bodies, what people do on the weekends, and that's killing people slowly anyway. But with something that they're trying to force so strongly onto the public, makes you wonder, well, what's going to happen in 6 months, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever. That's where it comes down to, because we don't know what's going to happen in 2 years from now.
Term, I mean, on one level, we've been hearing about obviously the ramifications of the boom shakalaka, as I like to call it, in the short term, like within days, months. But long term wise, I mean, some of these things may not manifest for years, decades, and may manifest intergenerationally. So I think I feel like we're really at a crossroads right now, because depending on, I don't think there's ever been a time where your worldview, based off of whether or not you're an anti-vaxxer, right, is going to have such a profound effect on not only your life but everyone else's life. And I could play both sides of this. Like, on one side, people are saying that if you are this anti-vaxxer, which apparently has been redefined to mean anyone that is opposed to forcing people to receive an inoculation, which is essentially a violation of human rights. So essentially, we're talking about non-rapists here. But if you're in this category, then one side will say that you don't care about people, you're selfish, you're not a caring, loving person. And this kind of relates to the entertainment industry, because the entertainment industry, I'm sure you've noticed this, in the United States, they're fundamentally within the leftist school of thought. They very much hate people that are always talking about individual rights, individual liberty, that kind of stuff, even though they're supposed to be liberal. But as you know, the whole concept of liberal has been inversed over the last few decades. But on one side, we have these people that are saying that anti-vaxxers are bad, 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 bad. Then on the other side, we have people, generally speaking, that are saying, hey, man, you don't get to tell me what I can do. I mean, you can do what you want, but don't force me to take something because you're scared of what might happen. And this is the whole other side. So I think we're going to see different camps. This has already been represented in this whole vaxpartheid regime that's taking place. There are going to be two sections of society at this point in time. And I think it's going to be so prevalent, their choices, their ideology, that we're going to see changes in their physiology based off of them having taken, this boom shakalaka, changes in their way of life. Because obviously people that are more freedom loving, they tend to be the kind of people that are more willing to live their own lives. And I think if we start separating, because in the past, I mean, people have pretty much just interacted quite willingly. We haven't had this separation, but we are now, particularly in Israel, we're seeing a point where there are basically two groups of people, and this is coming across in people being able to shop in certain certain supermarkets, going to certain restaurants, people being restricted to move around, having these ankle bracelets put on them. And I'm just very curious to see how this is going to play out in the long term, because if this continues, which it looks like it is, I mean, unless, of course, they just try to force all this shit down us, it becomes like a war, we're going to have two sections of the community, not just in Australia, but around the world, But
yeah, for sure. And
what's your experience been like? I mean, I'm not sure what interactions you've had with the entertainment industry throughout these lockdowns, but do you find that people you generally interact with are in favor of this, of what the government's doing, or they tend to be more resistant, like yourself?
Most won't discuss it. Most, as you would have seen being in Melbourne, most people haven't been really wanting to talk about the lockdowns. People have just been wanting to get on with their lives. Most, as far as it just doesn't come up in conversation. I'd say majority of people wouldn't have agreed with it and don't agree with it, but the majority only care about their pocket. So if it's affected their pocket, then they care. if it doesn't affect their pocket, they don't care. But it's affected everyone in that industry's pocket, really, and their ability to work and push forward with their career. So it's definitely affected people. But I guess once you realize it is basically a big club of people, everyone just shuts their mouth and doesn't say anything because you get outcasted and you get pushed to the side. So you don't say anything. You just get on with your life. And to some degree, I have just wanted to get on with my life after this last lockdown and just try and not think about it or even talk about it if there's no need to at the time. Once again, we're back into it, so I'm happy to go in and talk about this stuff again. And I'd still always be happy to talk about it no matter what, but I've just not been as willing to, when we're out of lockdown, go out of my way to be like, oh, look at this. You know, it's in front of everyone's eyes now. If people choose to go down the road and basically walk off the cliff and kill themselves, that's their free will. I respect their free will to do it, and good luck to them. I'm not going to do it, and I'll get on with my life at this point. I feel like I last year went out of my way to kind of, you know, try and take part in waking people up and just really saying what I thought and believed about it all, and what is basically, to me, right in front of your face and clear as day. You know, it's just, I've just lost respect for a lot of people in not in a bitter way, but I've just lost respect for, I've gained a lot of respect for a lot of people, but then I've lost respect for a lot of other people. I don't see it as I did before. I do see it in the way that there is going to be a huge amount of people who, no matter what, have already made their mind up. And they may have made their mind up 10 to 15 years ago, because we can't see what's going on internally inside someone in their heart, you know, if you want to look at it like that, because at the end of the day, that's what this all comes down to. So someone may have made their mind up 15 years ago about what they're going to, the choice that they're ultimately going to make one day, which you could, you know, you were talking about Israel and this chip that people are going to take. I strongly believe, and I 100% know that one day that is going to be a thing. You know, like the mark of the beast basically will be something people will have to choose. And it, you know, biblically in Revelation says you won't be able to buy or sell. Now, look what's happening at the moment. Even here in Victoria, you can't shop without a QR code. So that's getting pretty close. And, you know, the next thing will be a vaccine passport. And then before you know it, you won't be able to do anything without a chip. And then you will be outcast out of society. What I'm interested to see in this next step is how people are going to separate, like you were saying is happening in Israel when these vaccines come out, and how many people take it and how the country will divide. Or if the majority of the country do end up taking it, well, that's going to be a worry, obviously, for the minority who don't, because then, you know, it will come down to being outcasted. You won't be able to go into certain places. I'm sure there will be a community no matter what. I'd guess probably 20% of the population eventually who haven't, or 30. I'd hope more, but eventually down the road, it's going to be that.
It's already begun as far as communities being formed for anti-vaxxers and so forth. Like, whereas there are obviously restrictions preventing people that haven't been vaccinated from entering certain establishments, we're seeing the same thing in reverse. Like I spoke to Yasmina Adler just recently, who is a business woman. She's got a what is it, the Camina High Vibe Frequency Salon in Gold Coast, where she's not allowing people that have been vaccinated to come into a store. At the moment, they're doing this thing with dating apps where they're trying to put you lower on the preferences if you don't show your vaccine status. This was actually implemented. The White House is actually implementing this at the moment. But in response to this, there are now, like, there's this lady that's setting up a dating app for people that have not been vaccinated. So where is every push that you're seeing to kind of to steer society away from anti-vaxxers? Anti-vaxxers are responding. We had Krispy Kreme donuts giving incentives. Then there was incentives for people to receive the boom shakalaka. Then, of course, you had a gym giving incentives for, you know, for free membership for people that hadn't received it. So there is this counter market to everything that is being applied, and it just supports this idea that we're definitely going to be seeing two groups of society, or this is how I see it, or it's going to get to the point, because we're at the point, right, where they've started with the incentives. They moved to this virtue signaling world where they try to make it seem as if you're a really good person. They'll flatter you if you've done the right thing. And then we've moved into the realm of, eventually what I'm trying to say is this is going to move into the realm of, I believe, compulsion. And this is the word that you want to look out for, because this is the point where they start saying, okay, we've done everything within our power to try to get you to take this thing. Now, if you don't take it, now you go to jail. Now you can't leave your home, or we're going to fine you. And these are the kind of mechanisms like the governments. I made a video on this. This guy was talking about how, oh look, I mean, it sounds like a mean thing. I can't remember the phrase he used, but it was so livid. It's like, yeah, it sounds harsh, but we may need to actually force people to do this thing. And I'm like, okay. And that this is an arsenal that is at the back pocket of governments. I mean, we already have legislation in WA where an officer can use reasonable force to forcibly vaccinate you. So I know I'm going on a tangent again, but this is what we're dealing with, man. I think eventually it's going to be, if we don't get we don't get up to 70% or 95%, whatever it is, the next measure is to try to force people to do this thing by compulsion, which means
well, the writing's on the wall. I'd agree. The writing is 100% on the wall. And I was watching a movie the other night that I hadn't actually seen before, that I should have seen a long time ago. It's called The Pianist. I'm not sure if you've seen it before. It was made by Roman Polanski, the famous pedophile. I haven't seen it, but yeah, go on.
Yeah,
so this is he actually makes great movies. But yeah, this movie is about the Jews in Poland, and it's about how they were slowly put into camps. Now, this guy that the movie's about, it's based on a true story, was a pianist, and he was a very talented musician. He played on the radio, and I forgot the exact timeline. It was from the 30s to the 40s, the mid 30s, but basically it was the steps that the Nazis took to end up putting people into the camps. And it was about a 6-year timeline. And when I watched it, this is just after everything's been happening, it was very eerily close to what's going on now, because they were saying to people, okay, now you guys can't, what was one of the first things that they said? They said, you can't, you've got to live in the
separation. Yeah. The yellow
and
stars, right? Separate people. Oh, you're a
then you got to wear an armband. Then that came out about a year later, which is like the mask. Then you got to wear an armband to wherever you go. And then it was now you can only be in these areas, like we have lockdowns in not being able to leave. Absolutely. They could only stay in this ghetto, but they actually put walls up. And then it slowly got worse and worse and worse. And then
we're just putting you into a quarantine camp. Oh, it's not a concentration camp. First day, 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Same kind of shit, right?
Well, it's scary, man. I was about to bring that up as well, what you were saying about the quarantine camps, because, they're like, we need these done now. Like, first it's we need the vaccine. We've got it. No, we need these camps. See, they just keep pushing. It's like, oh, these camps are going to be built by December. Now you can say, okay, great. That's going to be used for when they start bringing in international travelers, which will be a huge amount to begin with. There'll be heaps of people coming from India. I've heard there'll be a lot all over the world. And they will, I guess, if you want to look at them just like that, I'm sure they'll be useful for that. But we know that these leaks out of these hotels are bullshit, and that it's I mean, I think so, that it's easily controllable, and it's like, it's not going to make a difference. The point is, what are these things going to be used for in the future? Well, once again, the writing's on the wall. We've seen it happen in history. We're not more special now than we were back then. The only difference is humans have always going to stay the same as they were, and they always will be. Nothing's new under the sun, except now what's worse is you've got a lot worse technology to bring in permanent tyranny, or some unreversible tyranny that will probably lead to the explosion or the end of the world. That people have been waiting for.
It's like people are like, I had the realization not long ago that we are actually in a world war. It's just like I'd always imagine that in my life I would go through some kind of war. I mean, we've had a few wars just over the last century. It was likely that we'd have one. But I think because there's this evolution of warfare, people don't deem a war when they're in it to be an actual war, because they're so used to a different idea of war, if that makes sense. And I think because we're in this fourth generational warfare at the moment where things have been done surreptitiously, we're seeing battles being fought through media, through information, because that's such a powerful tool. We're seeing the use of not just the media, but obviously the government to administer warfare, through the use of uh, technocracy, through the use of medication, things like that. And whereas I think people expect if there was some kind of like death toll, it would require shots, fires. That's not a very efficient way to do things. If you're going to be more sophisticated about it, you realize that information is the most effective way. Like we're dealing with the biggest psyop now, in my opinion, that has ever been manifested in this reality. And then the effects of this, not wanting to be too clear in my expression, because this is obviously YouTube, but I think it's the mortality is not going to happen within necessarily a day or two, but it's in the long term. It's in the stretch, like when people essentially force you to put something in your body, and then you don't see the ramifications of that until later years, and you could be talking about millions of deaths. That is a genocide, but it's
Yeah.
a slow genocide. It's war, but we just don't deem it as war. And the war right now, I mean, it's been manifested by these people that you cannot see, and we think they're doing this in our best interest. The government, who are taking orders from so and so and so and so, and it's so very Machiavellian. But make no mistake about it, we are in a war. The fact that we are having our freedoms taken away from us at this ever increasingly rate, the very fact that, I mean, look at us right now, where we're not able to leave. I mean, technically speaking, there's this threat, and this is the psychological aspect. Whereas we could actually leave our home right now. The fact that there's a threat of police officers that will arrest you, even if you have a medical exemption, they will try to coerce you to wear a mask. There is this threat that you cannot leave your home unless, of course, you're going to get vaccinated. So once again, coercion. You can't do this, you can't do that, and then they slowly close the door. All of these exceptions become less and less and less until it's compulsion. And it's this ever subtle warfare that is taking place.
Definitely. Yeah, man, you can feel it. And it really is. That's the scary thing, I think, is when will it be compulsion? At how far off? I mean,
Oh, I think I got that worked out, man. It's a slow plot. I mean, this is the perfect Machiavellian approach. You try to get uptake up to, let's say, 70%, the majority, right? Because it's all about a war, a battle of opinions. When you have enough people that have actually taken this thing, what do? It's very interesting that these lockdowns came into play just before the state of emergency was supposed to end, right? But it was extended, right? What you do is, I would argue, is you try to create a scenario where you're now seeing more spread of the boom shakalaka 19, and now people are going to get the people that actually have taken this thing are going to get angry at those that haven't taken this. I mean, I've actually had people say, "Oh, you're the reason that we're in this lockdown, man. People like you fucking conspiracy theorists that won't take this thing, you're the cause of it." And then eventually, the majority that have taken it at this point in time, they're going to start pointing fingers at you, telling you to take this thing, and that's all the government needs to say. Well, look, mate. Because this is coming from personal experience. One time at work, there was this new legislation that was put in forth in regards to what hours we'd work, and we weren't going to go ahead with it unless everyone agreed with it. And I was the only one that didn't want to go ahead with it because I'm the black sheep. Meh, not so much. And once they got everyone on board besides me, they just the team leader just flipped the switch around and said, "Oh, look, we're actually going to mandate. This is going to be mandated now. Everyone wants it. It's not fair." So, and this is how it works: you get enough people, 70%, then pow. Now just mandate it because I mean, and then you stop I mean, you're not having many protests at this point in time, right? And because it's all this it comes down to a battle of like it's all about like having a critical amount of people that are in favor of something. Because this is fundamentally, if this was a war, I mean, it always comes down to the numbers, right? Now, I'm glad that we're not. I mean, part of me is kind of angry that we don't have weapons, we can't defend ourselves, but realistically, it wouldn't change things if the majority of the public wanted us to stay in our homes. Fundamentally, this is always going to be an information war unless you can convince enough people that what they're doing is wrong. It's not the right thing to do. Then you're going to be in this tough situation. So it's all about winning as many minds as you can. This is why the media is doing everything it can to suspend people like you and I that want to share the truth. This is why fact checkers, for the first time in history, have been flourishing on the YouTubes and the Facebooks, because they need to perpetuate this idea. Because once you have a critical mass of people in favor of what you're putting forth, that's all you need. But bro, I know you're very outspoken about this, and you mentioned that you generally, from what I understand, like you generally don't bring this stuff up, in work and whatnot. But have you had the experience where people have cut you out, or you've had like difficult confrontations with people because of this? Like, how are you seeing this play out in your own circle?
Yeah, there's definitely been plenty of times I've been cut out from people. I'd say not just these last couple of years, but beforehand, that I've experienced that same sort of stuff. And it is definitely it's a psychological game that we've got going on here, a psychological war, an information war, and it comes down to the perceived perception of things, as well as what people feel like the majority of other people think, because that's how people go with things. Trends, you see how trends work through social media, you see how trends work in fashion, you see how trends work in every place. People want to belong, people want to feel like they're doing what other people do. There's only a small percentage of people who innovate things and who lead and who push these, and they're the people who, I guess, rise up as bigger players in this world in all different avenues of life. But when it comes down to that, I guess it's human nature for people to want to do what other people are doing and to not stand out, because no one wants to feel like they're standing out. No one wants to be crucified, per se. But unfortunately, that is what's required of some of us, is to be sacrificed to a large, the nature of not only courage, but sacrifice, I think, is what's divided the West from the rest of the world in a lot of ways. Has been the willingness to sacrifice yourself, which I believe comes from Christian values,
100%.
which is at the root of that, which is sacrifice, which is what it is to be hit over the face and then turn the cheek. That is a great thing to be able to do, because you understand it's for a bigger cause, it's for a bigger reason.
That's such a powerful point, bro.
Yeah, well, there's a bigger game here. We're in this, only life's this long compared to what's in the future of eternity, basically. So, I look at that and I just make simple. I just have simple rules now. Is like, I won't compromise myself and I won't back down on my free will, because at the end of the day, free will comes from God. It doesn't come from man. So no one can give me no one can tell me what I can and can't do, even if it means I have to die for it. I will die for my free will, because that and that is what it comes down to at the end of the day. This is going to be a test of that, because first the vaccine's going to test. This isn't going to be the end of it. There's going to be other things that are going to test people too, whether or not they're going to be outcasts, whether or not they're going to be able to go to this shop anymore, whether or not they're going to be able to go into this club or to this sports event or to this whatever it is. You will be outcast. What are your priorities? Because for me, I couldn't think of anything worse than now doing what these people say, to become part of the world again. For what? What am I? It's the things are fucked. Things are just getting worse and worse, and they're just becoming more and more restricted. What are you getting a pass to be? You're essentially trying to get a pass so you can be even more restricted. Now you're owned by someone. Now you're officially owned. The minute you put something in your body that you don't want to, but you're being coerced, to me, that's the ownership. There is, you're no longer your own person because you've compromised. So for me, freedom would not feel like having to do what other people say.
Absolutely.
So in order to have freedom, funnily enough, you have to
I
do
could
the
not
opposite.
agree more with everything you're saying there. And it's interesting how you were harping on how the Christian values essentially are around free will choice. And the one thing that I've noticed, because over the last few months, I've been watching a lot of interviews that were done in the 50s, where people had a very different attitude towards politics and human rights, and people would completely abhor communism. And I learned a lot about the mindset, not only of the people towards communism, but a lot about communism. And in the sense that one of the tenets of communism is that there is no God. And it's the denial of all objective morals. Like the whole idea of the Christian system, it's based off of this idea of free will. This is the fundamental theme within our legal system. Initially, it was that because you have choice, you're responsible for the consequences of your actions when you harm someone. The communist worldview is that you don't have autonomy. There is no free will per se. All there are is one, strategies to achieve certain goals. So when you deny objective morals, you deny free will, it puts you in this worldview where you can justify anything and you can deny rights. This is what we're seeing played out. And whereas communism became, because it's tied to millions of deaths, most people have a cursory understanding of the history. We don't use the word communism anymore. It's just been rebranded as something else, like socialism, like a smaller version of it. But fundamentally, we are seeing the same thing that is carrying out that took place a few generations ago, where essentially, I mean, the thing that you were talking about, the movie The Pianist, like the commonalities between what is happening now and what happened then. And bro, the classic example is the phrase, and I learned this just recently and it blew my mind. The Germans had a phrase. Do you want to know what it is? I'm sorry, I shouldn't say the Germans, the Nazis, in regards to all the atrocities they were committing, all right? So no offense to the Germans out there. I'm not holding you accountable for all the sins of your grandfathers and whatnot, but they love to say, I wish I knew the German phrase would be so much cooler. It was like something like "Es ist Sicherheit" or something like that. It meant it's for your safety, right? And that's the same thing that we are using to this very day. It's for your safety. We got to round up all of these Jews and put this yellow star on them to keep them safe. It's for your safety. And it always comes down to this, you know, whether it's right-wing totalitarianism or it's this communist worldview, it always comes down to this attitude where you can deny someone's objective free will because you're trying to keep them safe. And this used to fuck me up a lot as well. Like I think, oh well, you know, I don't want to endanger someone's life. What I'm putting them at risk. But then I realized it's this dream spell. It's this talismanic word that is used to justify all of these atrocities. And fundamentally, when you really get into the heart of it, it's not objective. Like it's something we use when we think we can determine the future. Like it is a metaphysical, scientific fact that you're appealing to potentiality. You cannot definitively know whether or not people are going to die if you don't lock everyone up in their home. You may have all these heuristic models, but we seem to be so caught up in the future and so caught up in this dream spell of fear that we use safety to justify all these erosions of freedom. And it's the same thing we are seeing right now. What do all our leaders tell us? It's for your safety. We're locking you down for your safety. We're giving you this forced vaccination for your safety. Everything that we are doing right now, even when it's a violation of the Nuremberg Code, when it explicitly says within the Nuremberg Code, cannot force medical procedures, voluntary choice is essential, informed choice is essential. Now we're hearing arguments like, oh no, it's not a violation because it's for public safety. And it drives me fucking crazy. Like I've been arguing with these momos online that make these dumb arguments that it's like 1 + 1 is equal to 3. It's like, oh look, no, it's not a violation because it's for your safety. And it's the same kind of stupidity that people fall into when they're trying to say things like, you know, men and women are not a Boolean. Like you can be a spec. It's this weird kind of logical thinking that people use to justify nonsense. And this is what I'm finding, man. Like it's the same kind of shit that we saw in the past is playing out right now before our very eyes. It's just been given a different name.
Definitely. Completely agree, man. No, people are losing their minds in that sense, and people are really, I mean, it just shows the general population as they leave their house every day or they go about their lives and they're not thinking about the fact that any day you could die from anything. Mm-hmm. I mean, the world is that perfectly crafted in a way that for us to think and suddenly get paranoid and in fear out of nowhere that there's this virus that's suddenly going to kill us and they can somehow track it. It's become a literally a clown show, some sort of circus joke. They before they brought this virus out in Melbourne and said, "Oh, we found it in your shit. We found it in your wastewater." Literally, we're digging through your shit to find traces of the virus. I love it how they say, "Oh, it's traces of the virus," like it's fucking hiding and sticking to things. What a load of shit. If you look around at bacteria everywhere, like just in a biological sense, in a scientific sense, when you really know how the world works and how there's bacteria everywhere and how viruses actually work and how your immune system works, and then this other politician in South Australia comes out and says, "Oh, duck when the ball comes," because there could be virus stuck to it because people from Melbourne have touched the ball. Like, what the fuck? Article. I mean, that's insanity. It's insane. A lot of people looked at that and thought it was insane. A lot of people see that stuff and just take the piss out of it because they can't believe it. But there's so many people out there who still, to their death, will do whatever they're told because it's for their safety. And as far as I'm concerned now at this point, fuck them. All those people who want to go down that road, good on you. Please do it for your safety. There's kind of a funny side to it in a way now where you've got all these people saying natural selection, like, oh, that person doesn't want to, inoculate themselves, natural selection. It's like, okay, well, all you got to say is, well, I really hope you go and take that for your safety. Do us all a favor and go and do it. And they said, yes, I will. It's like, good. Now you don't even have to get in an argument. Nothing you're saying to them is even bad per se. You're encouraging them to go and do the world a favor. They're doing the world a favor.
The crazy thing is,
what I mean?
Yeah, but their worldview is, our worldview is such that, look, if you want to do that to yourself, fantastic. But their worldview is such that whether it's envy or some weird sense of like compulsive, like just control, it's not enough for them to just take that thing. They have to force everyone else to take it. Like this idea that somehow if this thing works, the boom shakalaka is so effective, then wouldn't you just be happy you taking this? No, you have to force everyone else to take it. But if that makes no sense. But for some reason, and this is the frustrating thing. I mean, our worldview allows us to live our own lives and let other people live their own lives. But their worldview requires you to live their life. Even when,
well, it makes me think. Sorry, just quickly back to
but go on.
Sorry, I'm just with what you were saying about them. It's like as if their whole lives they haven't been making their own choices or feel like it's like other people have been making choices for them their whole lives. Like every day we're conscious of our decisions. I'm conscious of not every decision, but I try and be conscious of everything and look at myself in the mirror and understand what's going on internally, being able to self-reflect, being able to understand what decisions I'm making and where they could lead and things like that. A lot of these people, it's as if they've already been living along this communist, socialist type of life anyway. The next step will just be, a universal income, which will come eventually, and then they will just be on the teat of the government and be getting an income for it. And every decision will just be the government says, okay, I'm going to do it, like a lab rat. Yep, take this. Yep, next one, take this. Yep, and they just do it, and they get empowered by it because they're so weak and useless. They don't make any decisions for themselves. They are what you would call, unfortunately, cannon fodder, which is why these people view them like this, and that is why they're eventually going to be killed for it. Unfortunately, because no one wants that, but I'm just saying truthfully, that's what these people write in their own textbooks. They refer to these people as cattle. They refer to them as useless eaters. So they behave like it. And they scoff in your face and spit in your face and laugh in your face. You can't help sometimes but think, you know what? Please do everyone a favor and piss off. And it's harsh, and that's not my worldview because I don't wish that upon anyone, even the people who are stupid enough to do it, because I really don't. But at the same time, if someone chooses to do something stupid that ends up in a bad result for them when you've tried to tell them, I don't give a fuck anymore, because you know what? I respect you enough to make your own stupid decisions enough, even if it kills you. That's the way the world works.
It's a difficult one, when you feel as if someone's actions is going to lead to their detriment, and you care so much about them, but you also respect their right, their free will to make that decision. And whereas I know a lot of people come under the worldview that they need to force them to do what is in their best interest, but that leads to tyranny. This is what the government does, apparently.
Yes.
I mean, I don't even buy into the idea they're actually trying to take care of us in a lot of situations. It's more about a power game, like people that are really controlling this thing don't necessarily have your your best interest at heart. But it's this game the government plays where the idea is that it needs to protect you from yourself. And that, as you know, like good intentions is, what do they say? The road to hell is paved with them. And this is the frustrating thing I'm finding about the current scenario, you know? And I feel like you and I are very similar in the sense that, like, it's always fun watching someone say shit that you don't want to say yourself, you know? Like, this is why people like sharing videos when other people say like harsh shit. You know, these videos get the most amount of views because you wouldn't say it yourself. And I know, like, I love the fact when you call people out for, like, you told people very firmly what you do to them if they try to prevent you or try to force you to wear a mask. And, you know, like, it takes a lot of courage to do that kind of stuff. And I think deep down, we all feel that way, but a lot of us don't have the balls to say it. Like, when you were talking about how you feel, you know, in terms of, you know, wanting to respect people, but wanting to tell them off, like, I have that same feeling as well. Like, because one of the things I've been noticing from all of the, you know, let's kumbaya and just love each other. We got to love everyone, regardless of what they're saying, is like the way that I feel is that these people, I mean, everyone's saying that we're all in this together when we really aren't. Because if I'm being real about this thing, we're dealing with a group of people that fundamentally, like, they may not say to your face, but I know that they want this thing because I look at them. My psionic intelligence is able to discern where they're trying to push this thing to. And fundamentally, they want to force you to put something in your body. They would have you stay at home for the rest of your life. They would have you be locked up and punished if you didn't go along with something, even though you believe it's a violation of your freedom. If someone has that worldview, if I'm being objective, we just are not in this together. You want something completely different to me. You want the government to essentially control my life. I don't. I want you to be able to have the right to do it what you want, provided you're not harming anyone in the process, right? But there's this narrative that we all want the same thing. And if I think part of me wants to be all kumbaya, but I think, like you realize that, yeah, these people are sometimes deserve what they get, because fundamentally we're dealing with people that are willing to actually start a war on you, but they just don't have the courage to do it themselves. So they get the government to intervene and do it for you. And as much as I hate to say it, because I'm like you, like, part of me is always trying to be diplomatic, have congruence, but deep down, I am not one of these bleeding heart liberals, you know? Like, I am the kind of person that will fucking drop fireballs on you, man. If you tread on me and my friends, you know, I'm a sheepdog, man, because I cannot stand by and allow that stuff to happen, you know? And as much as I admire people to some extent that don't want to harm other people, like, you have the right to defend yourself. At what point do you say, oh, look, I don't want to stop? Because this is the conversation I've been hearing in all of these, like, freedom-loving circles, like, oh, we can't make a war out of this. We can't, like, we don't ever use violence, don't ever use aggression. At what point? What if they come to your door? What if police officers, have you been watching what's going on in Melbourne at the moment? I've been seeing innocent people, man. I'm talking about, like, women that just being completely battered by police officers. It's been all around the media. I've been seeing, there was a protest where a church decided to go out and start praying out in public. And the police officers, you know, granted they gave them warning, you're not allowed to be here. It's fucking unconstitutional. They just started dragging these women, or dragging people, and is beating the shit out of them, man. It's absolutely disgusting. Yeah. And the media,
I saw that.
Yeah, and the thing is, at what point do you say, oh, look, enough is enough. You do this shit, and I'm getting my guns.
Well, it's straight tyranny. Look, it's with what they did with the church. That guy who said he was going to open his church, for one, they arrested him the day before the church service happened. He's in prison currently, as far as I'm aware. Since last Sunday, he's still in prison. So they've put a pastor in prison. That's one thing that's very alarming. Nick Patterson, who I've spoken to a little bit, really nice guy, really down to earth, and has put himself out there since the start of the lockdown. And he's the type of person I'd say that should be kind of leading this sort of, someone like him is who I'd say is the solid type of figure that people should be looking to, in my opinion, especially with his worldview and things like that. Because, to be honest, there's been a lot of people out there who, it's done no good for anyone. It's been a bunch of squawking, screaming people who it's done no one any favors. It's made everyone look bad, and it's. But anyway, other than that, yeah, I've seen what's going on. He got put in prison as well. He got put in prison. I don't know if he's out of prison yet, but he got put in prison after he was assaulted, beaten up by the police, and then had his shoulder dislocated after being harassed all the time. The way they attack women. I saw another one today on Arvy's channel about a guy with his kid. They were trying to pull this guy. There was this Islander dude, and they were trying to pull him out of his car. 3 of them. They couldn't get him out of the car. And he just said that you're weak as fuck. That was the Nazi cops.
Yeah.
Oh, they couldn't get him out, and they just ended up leaving. And the kid's upset, nearly crying in tears, filming it, saying, "I'm scared." And he's saying, "Don't be scared." And the cops like straight up, and it's just like it's fucking
Warrior
disgusting.
Spirit. It is disgusting.
It's really disgusting. But who's going to do something? If people stood out en masse and said enough is enough, and there was a lot of people, men especially, and there's a lot. It doesn't even have to get violent, but there needs to be a lot of people, and there needs to be a big, large presence of men out there that are willing to say no. Then they need to fear that there's a presence. The cops, the Victoria Police aren't fucking around. There's a psychological game that they're going at, and it's a brutal thug type tactic. It's the way criminals operate in gangs.
Exactly.
And it's making a point to get them to not do it again. They're doing the same thing. They're not going to back down. The person who's telling them what to do, the head guy is the same as that guy who's the head of a gang or a cartel or something. He's saying, make sure that they not. And I'm sure behind closed doors, there's plenty of other shit that happens too, and this has gone back 10, 15, 20 years with Vic Police, even further. You could probably all the way go back to the gold rush. But some people don't know why it's like this. One of the Victorian history of the gold rush is something that hasn't been spoken about much as well, but one of the biggest gold rushes in the world that had a lot of crime and a lot of corruption amongst the police back then too, that had a lot of people from all over the world here. And then you had the miners go against the police and get killed. That was another battle that happened as well. But, there's all sorts of stuff that Vic Police has been involved in. But people are surprised. You're just seeing it now. You're seeing that enforcement just under a different thing. I've always never had a problem with the Victorian Police because, in a way, they've always, if you've just been going about your life, I know that there's always been stuff going on in the background, but if you've always been going on with your life, you've been left alone. They're like,
that's been the case with most people. I think most people would say that up until the last year or so, they didn't see the police as being that bad. But I think everyone is seeing it now, and they can feel it. Like the last interaction I had with an officer, he was getting annoyed at me because I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just on my bike. I wasn't riding it though, and I purposely just didn't have my helmet on because I'm not riding my bike. They told me to put my helmet on. I'm like, no, I'm not riding my bike. They step out of their car, right? Like 2 of them, and I'm like, oh shit, things get serious. And he's like, well, look, man, what's your problem? Like this guy was shocked the fact that like he thought that everyone likes him. It's like we went back and forth, and it's like, do you have a problem? Do you have a problem with like officers? Like, what's your problem, mate? And like I was like just standing my ground. Well, bro, like I don't. Yeah, I made it clear to the guy I don't like you guys. I don't have to talk to you. And he was asking me my name. I'm like, no, I don't really want to talk to you, man. It's like, well, look, this isn't about your helmet. Like, why do you have this attitude? And the thing is, he realized, and I could feel this, that he didn't it was a shock to him that it wasn't that I was standing up, but the shock to him that I really didn't like him. And I think that there's this vibe now. Police officers have been experiencing this, no doubt, because some of them, the good ones, and my personal belief is that if you were a good police officer, you're not going to be coercing people to forcibly wear masks and like forcing this bullshit on them. But there are some of them that aren't happy, and this is coming from one of my friends that's dating a police officer, and they're not happy with these legislations, and they know that it's changing the community's view of them. Because this police officer said to me, like like he's mentioned something about the community, how like he's trying to make sure that this community is good, on good terms. And I didn't want to have any of it, because the thing is, these people need to realize that the community are not on board with what they're doing. And I'm so glad you bring up this point, because the biggest issue, I've shifted my focus, my blame on the police and the politicians, all this kind of stuff, man, because so many of these rallies I'm going to, and granted, I understand why they do it. Thanos has been doing this, and understandably he's doing this because he's gotten so much bullshit from the police officers. But he's saying that, these people aren't bad. They're just following their orders. We've got to change the system. I'm like, fuck that shit. These people are violating the Nuremberg Code. It's these people that are actually the arm of the government that are actually at the heart of the problem. If the community stops saying it's okay for them to be doing this, this is the best way to address the problem, because then the police officers are either going to leave their jobs, realize that they can't live their lives because everyone hates what they're doing. But at the moment, I'm seeing so many people say they're just following orders. They're not that bad. We got to change the system. When my whole philosophy is like, no, it's the fucking order followers. It's the fucking Nazis. They're the ones that are actually instigating this shit. They're the ones that are coercing you to wear a mask. They're the ones that are fundamentally going to be putting this thing into your body. They're just, I mean, these presidents, prime ministers that are passing these decrees, I mean, they're just, I've heard Michael Malice say that they're love letters from Santa. You know, it's like these police officers don't have to be implementing this shit. It's bullshit. It's like me telling you right now to freaking go and pop a cap in some guy's ass. You know, it's like, what the you're an idiot if you go and do that shit. But for some reason, people are like, no, the police aren't, look, they haven't done anything wrong. And that frustrates me, man, because the police, and I listened to an ex-officer that says that they weren't always like this. You've been saying that it is, it's something that has essentially been the case since the gold rush. But
well, that was an idea anyway about the gold rush, because I've been wondering myself why is Vic Police? I've been aware of the corruption in Victoria Police for like at least 10 years, and I've been, and if there's documentaries, I don't know, there's one called the Lawyer X. It's on not Netflix, it'll be on Prime, I think, and maybe Stan and Foxtel or something. But basically, that's about a lawyer. Now, I think this was one of the first cases in the whole world. There was a lawyer talking about it, saying this is unheard of worldwide that this has ever happened. It was a police informant in Victoria. This is when there was all the gangland wars going on with Carl Williams and everything like that. There was cops back then that were accused of killing people that got off, accused of killing criminals, accused of turning on police informants and killing them, and then getting off in court, stuff like that. Double agents, basically, working for the criminals and themselves as a police officer or a chief or whatever it was. But there was this one lawyer. She was an informant to the police. She was a police informant and a lawyer for all the main criminals, and they allowed it to happen. And they turned a blind eye. The legal system in Victoria, that's unheard of. If someone has a right to an attorney, a criminal has a right to an attorney, a right to a lawyer. That cannot be violated. And that lawyer cannot be getting information from you when their code is to respect. You know what I mean? As a lawyer,
they have a fiduciary responsibility.
Violate your right and your privacy. They have to look after you in the side of the law, so that they can protect your rights to a fair trial. Well, this same lawyer was also passing that information that the criminals were giving back to the police, and then the police were using that to then prosecute the fucking criminals. So that's acceptable in Victoria, and that was going on. And there's documentaries. That was 10 years ago. So they've been doing this for a long time. They've been
no doubt.
Police everywhere are involved in criminal activity.
The one thing
Victoria is fucking bad.
The level of corruption within Australia, and I found myself saying this ashamedly, because as much as I, consider myself like I am an African, but I'm also an Australian, and I don't take pride in saying that I am massively disappointed in the corruption that is within Australia, and it's in parallel with certain African countries like Nigeria. Like what I've been learning goes on within the legal system. Like I've been listening to a lot of Serena Tefaha. She's one of these lawyers that has been completely attacked by the system purely because she's doing like a class action lawsuit and taking it up to the high court. These police officers, these lawyers, the institution, they will do everything within their power to harass you. They've been doing this to Avi, Nick Patterson. They currently have law cases to intimidate you, to essentially just break down and to drop this thing, even though it's obviously unlawful. Yeah. So anytime you want to, like, for instance, the stuff that is going on right now, completely unconstitutional, right? But you have to take this to the high court. That's the highest court of Australia. But before it can get there, you have to go through all this bullshit, and every step of the way, these guys will use every dirty trick to destroy you, to destroy your reputation. To the police officers will come into your house to intimidate you. This is the kind of stuff that Nick Patterson is experiencing. So it is so corrupt on so many levels, man, that you realize, oh,
Fucking shocking. It's
yeah,
disgusting. But it's coming from the top, and they know what they're doing. Just like you said, it's the boot on the face of, it's that
George Orwell
that
quote,
boot
yeah,
on the face of, yeah, I forgot exactly the quote, but something about, if you want to know what the future looks like, it's the boot on the
imagine a
face
boot
of
on
an
your face
innocent
constantly kicking
civilian
you.
forever.
Yeah,
Yeah, or something like that. And it is, that's what it is. And it's this push. And look, at the same time, in this world that we're living in, like, it's part of this. Unfortunately, this is the real world we live in now. Australia has been very, very lucky for a long time, and everyone should be grateful. And I don't think has been grateful for how lucky we've been here to be able to go about your life as an everyday citizen and not have to deal with really any issues from any level. But the real world is what's coming out now. The way the world really works is now starting to affect the everyday citizen more, because this is the way the world's always worked. People put this sort of shit on you if you fuck with the wrong people in power. If you fuck with the wrong people anywhere, they'll use intimidation against you. Yeah, it's morally wrong, but the world is fucked. The world is essentially, biblically speaking, the devil's. So this is his earth. So this is the way the world works.
I use that phrase as well. I call it devil's lore, like what we're seeing at the moment, because I focus on the human rights perspective, and we are seeing everything at play right here. The devil's lore, like there's no respect for the actual common lore, like you know all this shit, man. And we're seeing it's like the world is in absolute chaos. And I could not agree more with what you're saying, man. That's such a powerful point, that essentially what we're seeing now is really how the world works. It's almost like there was lag before, like it would take a long time, before we could experience, like when you're playing a game online and like something happens and you don't realize you're dead until later. It's like everything is happening in real time now. It's like the two worlds, the exoteric and the esoteric, have become so close.
Has come together.
Yeah, now you're seeing the hidden coming to light. And
definitely, yeah,
that's
a great
why
way
we're
to put
like,
it. Yeah.
this is so, like, everyone, regardless of whether or not they say it, and they know this subconsciously, they're seeing what is going on right now, and they're like, oh shit, I didn't realize this shit could happen. In the past, they'd be able to deny it, like, oh, I don't really think the government's monitoring everyone. Oh, I don't really think that the police are that corrupt. But everyone is seeing this. It's out in the fucking open. And you bring a salient point, man, and it's disturbing, but I guess the only way to combat truth is to actually face it. I mean, to combat evil is to actually see it for what it is. And the fact that this stuff is being exposed is the first step in us overcoming it. Because I think we're at the point where people, at least classic example, what's happened with Fauci. People have been exposed to the fact that, oh, this thing may have had its origins in Wuhan. Oh, the fact that all these conspiracy theories, like us moving in this technocratic system where we're going to be, I don't want to go too far into this because of YouTube, but essentially all of these conspiracy theories, like Agenda 20, 21, 30, they're coming into light. And people are starting to realize unequivocally now that this is not built of air and imagination. And because of that, that's the first step in actually addressing it. But look, let's move in the realm of solutions, man, because I feel like we are at the point where enough people are becoming aware of what's going on that we can start finally. And I know there's a lot of stuff going on in terms of protests, in terms of like people have started all these groups on Telegram because of all the censorship on Facebook. But what do you think is the most powerful thing people can do at the moment to confront what is going on in practical terms?
Yep. So I think things are going to go underground, which they already are, as censorship online just gets worse and worse. Things like Telegram and messaging platforms like that will be very useful, and people will have to find ways to communicate, whether that's through different mobile phones, things like that. Eventually it's going to get like that, to contact people. Everything will go underground. So I guess building up a network of people that you can communicate with and trade with, and I guess look after each other when it gets to that point as well. But the solution to pushing back, I guess, would would, you know, ideally be made in everybody's personal decisions every day. Because if everyone decided to not listen or not put on the TV and listen to the bullshit and buy into it, and not go and get tested to ramp up the numbers, and not go and get vaccinated, and to stop listening and to make their presence known, the solution would be there, wouldn't it? So ideally it would be in the personal decisions everyone makes every day. That would be the solution, is for people to make their decisions and put their money where their mouth is. But people are lazy. People don't want to do that. So the solution for survival is get yourself in the best position possible. I'd say financially, get yourself in the best position you can as well, and be ready for what's to come in regards to, because at the end of the day, having more liquidity and assets is always going to benefit you in the future, especially if you're going to be limited to having jobs and things like that. You're going to have to try and find ways to survive in that sense. So yeah, I'd say get ready for a financial crash. Financially, I'd say have as much liquidity as possible to put in, if you're into investment anyway, when the stock market hits rock bottom, because I think we haven't seen the financial crash yet. I mean, maybe that's bad advice. That's an investor's advice. I don't think it's bad advice. I mean, that's not the general advice everyone would look for, because everyone out of fear takes out. But if you're in a good position, then you can go in and buy a rock bottom before everything, kind of like when COVID happened. If you were to invest back then, except everything will go even lower.
Sure.
That's just from a financial point of view. People,
so specifically,
are you,
gold, I know you can't give advice on this, but are you moving your funds into cryptocurrencies, into gold, silver? When you say liquidity, what are you focusing your monies in at the moment?
Oh, well, cryptocurrency is great. I think that's definitely the future long term. It's digital currency is going to be used to control people in the end anyway, but crypto is a good time. There's a lot of gains to be made at the moment. It is the way of the future. Obviously, this isn't financial advice, of course, but yeah, I'd say, I mean, a lot of people are buying physical minerals like silver and gold as well. They're always useful if there's a Great Depression that comes, which will come as well after the financial crash. But then again, look, people have been talking about this financial crash since 2000, which there's been ones that have come like 2008, things like that. But this big one that's like the Great Depression, and people are starting to talk about it being very, very close. So I don't know. In that sense, I think problem is panic will really set in when the financial institutions all hit rock bottom, when there's no more jobs, when people are short of food supplies. Like, these are the next steps that are going to come in. This is what I'd say people need to be ready for, from literally a personal preparation point of view, is to be prepared for what's coming in that sense. But in the sense of waking people up to maybe stop that happening, people just need to put their money where their mouth is. I mean, it's as simple as that. Say no. Have some balls and just
become comfortable. Like, one of the things that I've been really focusing on lately is becoming more comfortable, being uncomfortable. And that means having these conversations with people I don't necessarily want to have these conversations with, you know. And a lot of the times you don't realize that by you simply just standing your ground, it's planting the seed, or it's inspiring other people to do that. Because you made a point a while ago about how we're so influenced by trends, you know. And granted, you know, most people want to fit in. All it takes is one person to actually stand in their truth and kind of just be real about what they feel. And I see you doing this a lot, and other people look at that as being more acceptable, you know, because a lot of the times there are things that you don't want to say because you don't want to be canceled. But when you say these things, a lot of the times other people are thinking these very same things, and you give them the confidence to say these things more openly, realizing that they're not that weird. Like, there have been times when there have been certain things I've wanted to say, and I've heard someone say, you know, just without any kind of a sense of shame, just say these things. And I'm like, look, I admire that, you know, because, and I think this just comes in the world of like being an artist. You're constantly having to put yourself out there. I think to truly be an artist, you have to be willing to express yourself honestly. And so much of, I think, by design, this Euclidean meat space, as I like to call it, where we're in, we want to fit in. There's this there's this push to be accepted by society. Therefore, we don't always express ourselves openly, honestly. But within our individuality, there is a lot of power, and it not only gives people the permission to be themselves, but it is what it means to, yeah, to be a powerful person. To actually express yourself openly, honestly, like a true artist. So, one of the reasons I always love hanging out with you, man, is that you are unashamedly Dick Jones. Like whether it's your attitude towards women, whether it's being just brash and saying crazy shit, it's it inspires people to do that kind of shit. And granted, we're in times where people don't want to be canceled. Like we were speaking about the entertainment industry just a moment ago, and look, there is a real fear where people within our circle, particularly in the United States, will get canceled. I mean, there's this idea that you're not supposed to you're not supposed to say to not be accepting towards women that are actually men, and I'm talking about here, and you're supposed to be embracive of the boom shakalaka and so forth. And when you don't have these attitudes, you're shunned away. People like Kevin Sorbo, the guy that used to play Hercules, has been completely. He lost his agent. Basically had to leave Hollywood because of his views, and this has happened to so many people. It's become unacceptable to essentially have bulls. It's like we've all been effeminated with this Hollywood culture, And it's interesting, like Hollywood in ancient Celtic history was like a special kind of wood that would be used to create wands. It would cast a spell on people. And it's very appropriate because the entertainment industry, Hollywood, it's one of the main tools that's used to cast this dream spell. It's where we get so much of this stuff is being reinforced. We're now seeing superheroes wearing masks now in these movies and so forth. We're seeing.
I didn't see that. What do you mean, like surgical masks?
There was this whole campaign. I can't remember what it was, but apparently, like there was some advertisement about how superheroes wear masks, and we're trying to perpetuate this idea that it's really cool to accept this woke culture, and it's not appropriate to be like. I got called an ableist or some shit like that just recently, because I made some joke about how the government is essentially raping us, and I use the analogy of how, when you're trying to hook up with a girl, even though it's not technically rape, you're like, let me do this one thing, let me kiss you, and she's cool with that. Then you try to do something a bit more, like, you try to touch her on the butt or something like that, and then eventually, before you know it, you freaking put in the vaccine, And essentially, the government is playing this game. Oh, just 2 weeks to flatten the curve, baby. Just 2 weeks. Oh, look, just wear this mask. Just put this on your face, baby. Just put this on your face. And then, what do you have it? But
you get raped.
Exactly, man. And this idea. I mean, this might be flagged because I've said something that is inappropriate, But it's like Hollywood is reinforcing this incredibly patriotic, like I don't know if that's the right word, but when in the United States, initially was founded on individual liberty, freedom, and now the most patriotic thing you can do is basically advocate for lockdowns, which are not only unconstitutional but against the very fundamental principles the United States was founded on. Not just the United States, all of like the Commonwealth countries, like Australia has a constitution as well. It's guided by the common law. But now the most Australian thing you can do is listen to your leader, mate. Do as you're told. Wear a mask. Don't be a fucking conspiracy theorist. This is Australia.
Exactly.
Oh, brother. But how are you shaping up, man? Because I know last year, like someone like yourself that loves to go out, like you were finding it rough as far as your mental health. How are you coping with everything? Are you I know you recently moved, right? Like what's your situation at the moment?
Yeah, no, I'm doing good, man. I'm just staying low key at the moment. Just relaxing and not letting anything get to me, and just trying to focus on myself in regards to what I want. Just getting back into, fitness and focusing on financial stuff, and just thinking about the future, I guess, in that regard, and then not letting the whole thing get to me. Just trying to play it day by day and just see how it comes. And like you said, be comfortable being uncomfortable, I guess. Like there's no way we're going to know what's going to come at the next year, and I'm okay with that now. I don't, it's a wild I've accepted the world we live in. I know the world we live in. I guess it's survival of the fittest. I'm up for the challenge, I guess. I'm up for the challenge of seeing what happens.
That is a powerful attitude, man. The warrior,
Yeah.
the path of the warrior,
Yeah,
and just
I'm
embrace
just
uncertainty.
ready for whatever comes, to be honest. So that's how I feel, and I've accepted that. So I'm happy with that. And
Yeah.
in a way, last year was just getting people ready for the future. So
Mm. Well, I'll
um,
tell you this, man. Things are about to get shit real over the next few months. I mean, whereas I think everyone could feel it. I remember saying this at some point last year, and just before I said it, I went through the most traumatic events I'd ever gone through. But I truly feel over the next few months, things are about to take another turn. And granted, for people like us that are quite happy to embrace the fire. I think people like us really come into who we are supposed to be in these times. But I think for a lot of us, we're really going to have to take a step back and really come to terms with the kind of person that we are or we want to be, because the decisions that we make over the next few months are really going to determine not only our life, but the entire future of mankind. And I like just some of the things I've been hearing that are on the verge of going on right now, not just in Australia, but around the world. Things are only about to get more insane. So, with that being
yeah,
said, brother, like I'm just gonna let you close it off here. I try to keep these things to about an hour and a half, and we've had a long chat, brother. But what are some words that you want to, just some final words of encouragement you want to share to people in regards to uh, facing their fire?
yeah, that's a great way to finish it. I'd say just going back to what we were speaking about before, have courage in everything that you do. Um, have faith in the process of everything in life. Just have faith that things will make sense as you go through them, even when they don't make sense. Just know that you don't know what's ahead in the future. Even if things are looking really bad, you don't know what is around the corner. And if you're living in these times that we're currently living in, you're obviously meant to be living in these times. So you have a purpose, and there's a future there for everyone if they choose to grasp it and choose to actually find out what that is. So what if things are going to get hard? You know, be comfortable to be uncomfortable. Like you were saying, Crystal, I think is a great way as well. Like just keep pushing forward no matter what. And yeah, focus on love more than anything. That's the only thing that you can grip to, because that always, uh, love gets rid of fear, overpowers
Absolutely.
fear, is
I always
stronger.
say, yeah, I always close off my videos now by saying illuminate your mind with wisdom and strengthen your will with love. In that it's good to be courageous and have the drive to do these things, but the only thing that is more powerful than will that actually fuels it is love. Like you need to be driven by something, and obviously that's whether that
Yeah,
is God,
absolutely.
Krishna, Buddha, Allah, whatever your religion may be. There is this unifying feel, this force that I think moves people towards doing things. Because a lot of people have asked me, like, why do you feel so strongly about this kind of stuff? Because I just feel like I'm here. Obviously, we're all here as instruments of, like, this is my worldview of God, and we all have a role to play in the times that we're in. I think we're fortunate, as weird as it sounds, to be in these times because we can be the what do they say, like the white blood cells of the planet. We're able to fight off the cancers that are essentially infiltrating this planet right now, this Orwellian state that is trying to erode our light, our love. And by being here in this very moment, you now have the opportunity to be a catalyst for change, and that in of itself is a beautiful thing. I think I know as a Christian, you talk about sacrifice and service and how that is a powerful thing. And I know one of the things that Einstein would say that I absolutely love is that, one of the greatest things that you can do in life is actually to be of service, whether that's being a narcissistic performer, like myself, but at the heart of it, it is wanting to actually do something that benefits not only yourself, but those around you. And I think we're in a great position to do that. You're definitely someone that is a social influencer in the very fact that you're an artist, and you're also an activist and you speak so openly about this kind of stuff. So kudos to you, and I know that you're going to inspire a lot of other people to do the same thing, brother. And it is a pleasure to have you as my friend. You are a scholar, even though you're crazy and charismatic as fuck. You drop the wisdomatic truth bombs, brother. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to get a lot listening to this podcast. So,
thanks, brother. I appreciate that, man. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
that. And you too. Yeah.
Thanks, brother.
You're going to do a lot in the future.
Thanks, my man. That being said, I want to wind this thing down. I'm going to put your links below. People can get in touch with you by the Instagram. I know you're still on the corporate book, Facebook. What else are you on, brother? People want to get in touch with the Dick.
Yeah, if you want to get in touch with the Dick or touch the Dick, it's at Richard Ray Jones.
I set you up so well for that one.
Yeah, you did. Richard Ray Jones on Instagram, or TikTok.
That's right. You've recently become a TikTok user, man. I'm enjoying your TikToks.
Slowly but surely, we'll see.
Yeah. So I'll put your links below. And ladies and gentlemen, be sure to reach out to us. Be sure to just start speaking unwaveringly about the truth about what's going on in this world. And eventually, I think I always like to say that there are three things that you cannot hide for long. Well, three things that cannot hide for long. One is the sun, the moon, and the other is the truth. Keep speaking the truth. Peace out. Keep it real. Don't drive in text. Richard Ray Jones, you are a legend. I admire the fuck out of you, my brother. Until next time, thanks again for coming on the Crucial Journey podcast.
Thanks, brother. You too. It's been a pleasure.
Peace out, bro.
Water can flow or it can crash. Be water.
Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we
All
are
matter
powerful
is
beyond
ultimately
measure.
quantum energy that originates from another dimension.
Eventually, intelligence will become substrate independent. We will transcend the limitations of biology.
And I've seen the promised land.